at the last minute test of the audio, make sure it works. I really appreciate everybody coming out on this rainy day. I'd like to welcome you to the second annual Data Center Town Hall. We did this a year ago. We had 300 people in the audience and 100 people on Zoom. So we had quite a crowd, but it was breaking news last year. But this year you get to hear about some thoughts, things that have gone on in the past, things that are being worked on right now, and what some of the future plans might be. But I'd like to welcome, first of all of you. We have representatives from Tucker United that are here, and we also have some representatives from Fundamental Data. So they'll be able to share some of their thoughts. And also with the Q&A at the end, they may be able to answer some questions that none of the rest of us can. So to give you an idea of the agenda, I'm going to ramble on for a little bit. And then we're going to have Tucker United talk a little bit about the things that they've done. And then we have Beth who's going to talk about the Harvard University health study, or the dispersion modeling study that was done. If we have any other candidates here that are running for the House of Delegates or County Commission, I'd like to give them a chance to speak and state what their position is on the power plant. And then after that, we'll have question and answers. Does that sound okay? Okay, very good. Okay, so I wanted to start a little bit with a story. In the 1930s, my parents were living in a country called Estonia, and things were good. They had freedom, they had democracy, and life overall was really great. And then in 1939, the Soviets came in. And about 1940, the Soviets went on a killing spree. They went up to people and said, "Are you a communist?" "No, I'm not." "Boom, you're dead." And they kept doing this until they killed about 60,000 people, which represented 1 out of 15 individuals in the population at that time. My grandfather was executed. My uncle was executed. My mother's first husband was killed. It was really trying times, and it put a lot of fear and uncertainty in people's lives. But then the Germans kicked the Soviets out. But then again, in 1944, the Soviets came back at the end of World War II, and they stayed for 50 years. So my parents, in February of 1945, were able to find a fisherman that was willing to take them 60 miles across the Gulf of Finland to Finland. And this was at night, and they were dodging patrol boats and submarines that were trying to sink all of these crafts. And when they arrived in Finland, they were captured by the Finns, because they had signed a recapitulation treaty with the Soviets saying they would turn any Estonians over to them. So my parents, luckily, were there on a Friday, and the Finns, because they were so supportive of this treaty, they said, "Well, it's the weekend. Why don't you stay in this cabin and we'll come back for you on Monday?" So they luckily were able to find some cross-country skis, and they skied cross-country for over a week, about 300 miles in February in Finland with no tent, no sleeping bags. They used newspapers for insulation. They melted snow for water, and they had a little bit of bread for food. They ended up living in Stockholm, Sweden for about 3 years, and they still didn't feel safe because of the Soviet threat. And they and 35 other people got on a sailboat, a 90-foot sailboat, and they left Stockholm for the United States. And they arrived 4 months later with lots of trials and tribulations along the way. The US government, because half of the passengers were Finnish, they were told they weren't refugees, so they couldn't enter the United States. So they took the sailboat up to Canada, where they were welcomed with open arms. The Estonians were flown to New York City, and they were put in Ellis Island, which was already closed for immigration, but it was being used as a detention center. And they were there for a year. And then they were allowed to immigrate into the US, and they settled in New York City. 2 years later, I was born. That's where I was raised. The reason I tell you this story is because this country, to so many people, is the shining light on the hill the beacon that represents freedom and democracy and all those kinds of things. And that's the way I was brought up. And I wanted to talk a little bit in that context about House Bill 2014. That was passed last year by the legislature, both the House and the Senate, and signed into law by the governor. And that takes away all local control. It takes away your voice, my voice, the local leaders, basically ordinances, policies, rules, regulations. Nothing applies when you're doing a microgrid project. And in my gut, I would say that that law is unconstitutional. But if nothing else, I will tell you it's not democratic. I think it's a shame what they've done to all of us and what it means to us going forward in this fight that we have with this power plant. So hopefully, things will change. Politicians have said privately that they want to change it, even at high levels. But even in this last session, no changes were made. So I will share with you. Does anybody know how you tell if a politician is lying? Their lips are moving. You're right. And I say that as a politician, so what can I say? But yeah. So the problem with HB 2014 is, I think many of you've learned, politics is local. Governance is local. If you all have a problem, you're knocking on the door at the town hall, and the next thing you know, you and I are talking. You're either telling me that things are going great or that there's some things you're not happy with. And there's no way of avoiding it. But the further you get removed, the less we really have that political dialogue occurring. Not a lot of people drive down to Charleston to express their thoughts and feelings, and even fewer go to Washington, D.C. So I would say the only option that we really have to be cognizant of it is that we have an opportunity to vote. And so just remember that the House of Delegates and the State Senate passed HB 2014. Our delegate for District 85 voted for HB 2014. Our senator, the president of the Senate, Randy Smith, and Jay Taylor, they voted for HB 2014. And just keep that in the back of your mind. I want to talk a little bit about the air quality permit that was granted to Fundamental Data this year. I think, first thing in context, the mission of the DEP is to provide a healthy environment. And I think the DEP lost sight of that. They did what I view as very formulaic. You're allowed to be a synthetic minor permit, which is what Fundamental Data has applied for, if you have emissions of any potential toxic poisonous substance less than 100 tons per year. Now, 100 tons may not sound like a lot, but if you put it into pounds, that's 200,000 pounds of any one toxic substance emitted per year. And there's multiple ones that are emitted, not just one. You'll hear later one of the most egregious ones is particle matter that's 2.5 microns or less. It's very pervasive and has a lot of issues with it. But there wasn't any real local involvement with anybody local before the permit was applied for. It was a surprise, as I stated last year, to myself, to Jody Flanagan and Thomas, to the county commission, to the development authority. Nobody really knew that this was going on until there was an ad in the paper that said that a permit had been applied for, and it was to build a power plant, and the location was identified. The DEP did their job, I guess, in a very rudimentary form. They do a very formulaic process. If you say that you're not going to emit toxic emissions greater than 100 tons per year, then you're a synthetic minor permit. And you meet the threshold and you're good to go. And that's what happened. So the DEP did what they're supposed to do by the rules that they work with. I would maintain that the DEP did not live up to their mission, which is to protect the environment. I don't think that they applied any judgment to the process, nor did they use any common sense. If they had used some common sense, I think they would have questioned the claim that this power plant is a synthetic miner. And I say that for a couple of reasons. The first is there's 30 large power plants in our region. And arguably, this power plant would be in the top 10 of the 30. Of the 30, or the other 29, they're all major source pollutants, as opposed to a minor source. The other reason I think that's a fallacious claim by fundamental data is because of what they're supposed to be doing. They're a microgrid. They're not connected to the grid. They're to be supplying power exclusively to data centers. Data centers have to operate 24/7, 365 days a year, and you can't reduce or eliminate providing power to them. That's the reason there's 30 million gallons of diesel fuel as a backup source. In case there's any interruption to natural gas, then the diesel kicks in as a backup power source because it has to be a no-fail mission. You must provide power to data centers all the time. Fundamental data made the claim at the appeals process that when they approach 100 tons of some emission, they'll just stop. I don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. And people here can say what they want about that, and we can talk about it later, but I don't believe it. The other thing that gives me a little bit of angst with all of that is that I think fundamental data truly in the beginning will be able to stay under those thresholds as they have one or two data centers to supply initially, but more will be built. There will be some point where they will reach a critical level where they have to become a major source. And they will apply, like anybody else, to say, we're now a major source. What's the state going to do at that point? The power plant's been built, the data centers are operating, and now they're a major source. Are they going to shut them down? Are they going to make them do their due diligence, which is kind of done after the fact and a little bit too late? So I question the whole process. And that's not necessarily the fault of fundamental data. It's what the state is allowing them to do. The state last year had 300 permits that were applied for, and they approved 300 permits. So their focus is on getting businesses and developers to having a successful permit. I think they've lost sight again of their mission, which is to protect the environment, which also means to protect us. And that's what I think they're not doing. So I have great concerns with the air quality permit, the process, and the DEP as a whole in the air quality division. Then there's the question of the diesel. 30 million gallons of diesel fuel stored in 3 large tanks. What's going to happen with the diesel fuel? Optimal conditions, it lasts for 18 to 24 months. As you approach the end of that diesel life, or its shelf life, what are they going to do? Are they going to dump it in Pendleton Creek? Are they going to truck it out like they trucked it in? Or are they going to burn it? They're going to burn it. I have no doubt. Again, I could be wrong, but that's what I suspect. We're going to talk a little bit about the Harvard study. I'm not going to go into it very deep because Beth is the expert. She's going to cover that in more detail. But I will tell you as an individual that has cancer, that's the last thing as a human being you want to hear. It's a battle I've been fighting for 27 years and continue to fight. But when you hear those words from a medical professional, it's probably one of the most depressing things that you could be told. And the same impact is true for your family and your friends. They don't want to hear that about anybody that they care about. So we've got a situation now where the dispersion modeling basically says that Davis is ground zero. Thomas is going to feel the effects of this power plant and its toxic emissions, but Davis is the worst location in the area. And what that represents in the study is that one person per year will probably die. 4 to 6 people will develop cancer, cardiac, pulmonary impacts, asthma, other diseases that are related particularly to particulate matter 2.5 microns and less. So it's problematic. I view my job as mayor as doing a lot of things, making sure there's drinking water, there's sanitary sewer, the infrastructure gets corrected. But I'm also equally and even more so probably concerned with the health, the welfare, and the well-being of the people that live in Davis. And I take that role very seriously. And that's why I'm such a proponent against the power plant being built in the current proposed location. I take a lot of objection to it. So the other thing that they're talking about is that in the Harvard study, that this will cost the community anywhere from $19 to $35 million a year in additional medical costs. The largest component of that is attributed to anybody that dies, but that's greater than the projected revenue that would be coming into the county from this particular initiative. So that's a question that we all have to think about. But the other question that I really propose to many people that are in leadership and key positions is, what's the value of a human life? If they say, your grandmother is going to get cancer and die, is that worth $8 million, $15 million? What's the value of a human life to offset the risks and the dangers versus the revenue that may be coming in that's on the positive side of the equation? So, a lot of questions in that respect. I still maintain that this power plant needs to. I don't mind being in Tucker County, right by Mount Storm, where there's a coal-fired power plant that already exists. That's my feeling. It wouldn't be as adverse an impact to Davis. Now, there may be other communities that take issue with that because it'll affect other people. But again, I'm speaking from the perspective of I've got to worry about what it does to the town of Davis. So hopefully, you'll get a chance to hear a couple candidates today. I'm going to stop rambling and turn it over basically to Tucker United right now to talk a little bit about the things that they've had going on. Okay. Thank you. Okay, it's going to be Beth talking about the Harvard study.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Beth. I'm a full-time resident down in Canyon Valley, and I'm just here to talk a little bit about the study that Tucker United commissioned to basically answer the questions on if this power plant were to go in, what would be the cumulative as well as the short-term health impacts and the associated costs to our community. And so they did some modeling based on one particular parameter called PM 2.5 that Al mentioned a little bit ago. And that's basically particulate matter that's less than 2.5 microns in diameter. To put that into perspective for you, if you think about one human hair, it's about 30 times as smaller than one human hair. So it's not something that you can see with the naked eye, but it's something that would be emitted into the air from the power plant. With that, there are many different things that will go up in the air, right? And so we're just talking in this study about one particular air pollution parameter and the well-studied impacts from it. But we can all agree that none of us would take any of those things coming out of those stats and say, gosh, I want to breathe those in. Those are going to be good for me. So this is just one parameter. The other piece of that is that it looks at just the specific health impacts. And so it's not a study that looks at what would be impacting us throughout our economy, the aesthetics, the land use, our water, any of that. So that's just one piece of the puzzle that we need to think about to make good decisions with good data. So to launch into it briefly, some of you have copies of it. They were out back. They're also on the Tucker United website. And so just to launch into it briefly, the researchers took the permit and the emissions from the permit, and they applied it to a very well-respected model to see where that would go. So it's called dispersion. So where the air is going to spread out. And then they used the census data to see who it would impact the most. And so it looks at where it's going to go and who will be in that plume, essentially, of pollution. As Al already mentioned, and as we would obviously think, the highest impacts based on the highest concentration increases would be here in Davis-Thomas, Canadian. So like very close. And that makes sense, right? Wherever the power plant, wherever you're closest to it, that makes sense, but that would be the highest impacts. However, those impacts and those increases we could expect to happen moving downwind too. And so we think about our neighbors in Petersburg, certainly the Mount Storm area, Moorfield, beyond all the way into Virginia and some parts of Maryland. And so like this is a very, very large area of impact. And that's where they got those numbers that are part of the study. Particulate matter 2.5 is so small, like we talked about, less than 30 times the diameter of a human hair. So the really interesting thing about it is that it can actually pierce through your lungs and go into your bloodstream. It sounds like something out of like a sci-fi movie, right? Piercing your lungs and going into your bloodstream. But the way that it does its damage, the first thing we think about when you're breathing something is your lungs, right? And so the respiratory impacts. People who already have asthma, who already have COPD are going to be at highest risk. We also think of our children. So I'm a mom. I have a 3-year-old and a 6.5-year-old. And one of the first things that I thought about with this power plant, the scientist and the mama in me said, how bad will it be? I don't know the data. And so I went to the scientific data and started reading journal articles, which is really quite boring a lot of the time. And it was just really, really sobering. And so instantly, reading report after report, large journal articles, big meta-analyses, that's a word for like a very big, robust study that made me say, it just basically like made me wilt. Because this is a place that I love. This is where I want to raise my children. And when I read the data before we had the Harvard report commissioned, I said, I can't let my kids go to school in Thomas and be safe. Like that was my conclusion, reading the data. And so we had the Harvard report commission to actually run the data for this region, and it confirmed it. And so going back to PM 2.5, the first thing we think about is respiratory. I think it's really harrowing to think of raising children and having children running around in Davis and Thomas and going to school in Davis and Thomas and being exposed to these contaminants, one of which is PM 2.5, that are well documented to have concerns for premature death. So if you look at the time span, the studies show between 2000 and 2019, 1 million premature deaths across the globe were related to PM 2.5. People might say, oh, that's not really a big deal, or 2% of the deaths between that time. 2% of the deaths across the globe in that 20-year period is a lot of people. So this is not something that is a minor detail. We think about cardiovascular risk, so it's penetrating through our bloodstream, increases cardiovascular risk. Buzzwords there, stroke, heart attack, right? But those are cumulative over time. So that's not necessarily something we would expect right away, but that's something that we would over time likely see. Cognitive decline, dementia would be the thing that you think about. When you've seen that in your family or in your community, you know that nobody wants that to happen to anybody on the planet. We think about increased costs with hospital admissions, with emergency department visits. We think about our fabulous healthcare providers that are here in the Valley, so St. George. We think about our providers up in Thomas and what that might look like for these federally qualified healthcare centers that have more patients walking in with asthma exacerbations that aren't able to manage their symptoms with their day-to-day medicines or with their kind of asthma attack plans as well. We think about all of these risks and all of the people. And so when I look around the room, I see a lot of people I know. I see a few faces that I don't know. But in my day-to-day life, I know that the risk that comes with living under the shadow of the power plant so close is not worth it. And it also means to me that that is a risk that this company is taking with our health, with our lives and our livelihoods. And it is an inappropriate risk that is reckless and that we don't need to trade off economic development for our health. We do not deserve to pay that cost. And so there are better ways to do this that will allow safety for people and to prevent relative and cumulative risk to people. Al mentioned the number 19 to 35 million per year in cost. And so that's really looking at, and that's delineated in the study, so you can look at that more. That's really looking at the cost overall per year. And so things that you think about, we think about hospital visits. It also, a lot of that cost that's in that report is based on the estimation of what the cost, which I would say is very hard to actually put a number on somebody who dies early, right? So you think about all of their contributions throughout their life to the economy. It's not just like the price of their life that's decided on, because it's like a well researched, ability to be able to say what that cost is. One thing that's really important that you know, and that I want everybody to know, is that there is no documented safe level of particulate matter 2.5. There is no documented safe level of particulate matter 2.5. And that's the one that's so well studied, one of many that would be going up into our air and causing many of these risks, including cancer, like Al mentioned. That begs the question of regulation. So some people will say, well, it's going to be okay. The DEP said it was okay. They gave the permit for it. If you notice in their writings as well as their meeting, they're not saying it's safe for us to have this here. Their language is, this meets the requirements. That is very different. It is not necessarily safe to be here. It meets the DEP's requirements. And as Al mentioned, their requirement is for fundamental data to say, we will only emit this much. Trust us. However, the capacity of that plant was very different. And frankly, if I were a power plant owner and operator, I too would decide to go for a synthetic miner permit first, because the process of converting it to a major source looks much easier, and they can circumvent some of the impact studies, including dispersion modeling, which we have done with the Harvard report in order to do that. And so I would probably do the same thing, but it does put us at more risk. That's there. So as I mentioned, the highest increases would be in Davis and Thomas, but again, they would extend all the way into Virginia. And so they kind of key points. There's no safe level of particulate matter 2.5. We can expect health risks. And so it is an inconvenient truth, but the expectation is that our families, our kids, our grandparents, our neighbors, some people, us, yes, are going to have these health impacts. And I personally think that that is inappropriate. Another thing to consider is that these estimates are conservative. And so this model does not take into the account a couple of things. One of which is the fact that we have some thermal patterns that are called inversions. So the cold air is going to sink and stay. And the thought is that will probably trap these pollutants down, increase our exposure during those times of inversion. And that's not accounted for in the analysis. The other piece of the puzzle that doesn't take into account the differences in the operation of the plant. And so it's documented that these plants will be emitting more or less at different times based on what is happening. Startup, shutdowns, different levels of load. And so we can expect that there's variation there. And with a permit that comes in just underneath, and when you think about it statistically, it is within the statistical error probably for that plant to be above the emissions. We can expect that this is actually a conservative estimate of the health impacts that are there. So just to close, or Amy, do you want to add before I close? Okay, so just to close, Amy will be up in a minute. There are ways for us to have healthy and safe economic development, and we need it in Tucker County. We could use more good jobs. I want everybody to have food on their table, every kid to grow up in a safe home that has heat in the winter time. We want all of these things. We want a thriving community, but we don't have to trade our lives and our livelihoods and our health for a few jobs here. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer questions about the Harvard report. Amy, who is here, she'll be talking soon in a minute. She's a good person to talk to. You can also reach out to Tucker United. If you just Google Tucker United, you'll come onto our website and be able to send an inquiry that's there. But happy to talk, happy to answer questions. And thank you all for coming so much.
It is in my area.
Thank you, Beth. Now it's time for Amy to come up and Shaena. Somebody's coming up.
Somebody's coming. Somebody's coming.
We win. We get Shaena.
Hey guys. Oh, that's hot. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Shaena Crossland. My family and I live in Thomas, and I'm the community organizer for Tucker United. And I'm going to speak to you today a little bit about the brief history on who and what Tucker United is, and what we've been doing over the past 13 plus months, and how to get involved if you choose to do so. Before I get into that, I want to thank Beth again. I have heard her talk about that Harvard study numerous times. And one thing that I think constantly needs to be repeated when it comes to that study is that these are conservative estimates. I'm going to repeat that again. These are conservative estimates. Cool. So Tucker United is a coalition of Tucker County residents and their allies that formed in response to last year's community meeting on the Ridgeline Power Plant and House Bill 2014. We've been advocating for the power plant. We've been advocating for the power to shape our future and to protect our community, to protect our families, our natural resources, and our economy. We do stand united in opposition to this proposed power plant and the data center complex, as well as to Charleston's overreach regarding House Bill 2014 and other legislation that hides vital information about these projects from the public view. Our mission is to ensure that Tucker County remains vibrant, that it remains healthy, that it remains a beautiful place where we can all live and work and play for generations to come. Over the past year, we have gathered, we have learned, and we continue to spread facts about gas power plants, data centers, and the anticipated impacts of House Bill 2014. We've also held community events such as, but not limited to, potlucks, Zoom calls, and watch parties, bread breaking, and many of those events have included guest speakers who are experts in their field. Other things that have occurred over the discovery of the Ridgeline project include the DEP permit meeting that was held at Caneen Valley Resort, where many county residents showed up and voiced their concerns about what was going on here. We've been collaborating with other counties. Can't see with my glasses on or off. We've been collaborating with other counties around the state who are also opposed to data center projects in their backyards and their loss of local control over them.
We filed legal appeals regarding the heavily redacted air quality permit submitted by Fundamental Data. We've also run postcard campaigns, email campaigns, we've written letters, we gathered petitions from local businesses and residents, and we've requested that local resolutions be passed against the Ridgeline Project and House Bill 2014. We've also supported several residents who have submitted op-eds and opinion pieces in many local newspapers. And that is to state their opposition to this project, as well as their concerns for their family and House Bill 2014. We're going to repeat that a lot, House Bill 2014. Last month, we submitted a letter of community intent to the West Virginia Department of Commerce. We've spoken to our state representatives, and we will continue to do so. We do this to demand transparency. We do this so we can demand that we have a seat at the table when it comes to the future of our county, because that's what this is about. This is our home. We've also attempted on many occasions to engage with Fundamental Data, but we have not had success. So it looks like maybe we'll have some today. I look forward to that. If you're interested in helping in ways to get involved, or you just want to read more about the topics that are related to all this, as Beth said, you can find several resources on our website, and we do try to update those as much as possible. If you're a resident in a town within this county that has not passed a resolution, we encourage you to write to your town official and attend town meetings. Ask the town to adopt a formal resolution opposing Ridgeline and or House Bill 2014. We encourage you to attend your commission meetings. Our commissioners meet twice a month, guys. It's on their website. Go, talk to them, get involved. Ask them to pass a resolution regarding House Bill 2014, opposing it. Have conversations with them. Talk about zoning. Please remember the importance of being kind and being respectful when you go to these meetings. Kind words go a long way. We also encourage you guys to write in or call or email your reps outside your county regarding House Bill 2014. Write to Secretary of Commerce. If you don't have that information, find me. I'll give it to you. We also encourage you to continue to write and speak to Fundamental Data. And like I said, they're here today, so look forward to hearing what they have to say. And again, if you're not sure how to start any of this, let me know, or let someone from Tucker United know. Check out our website. We do have a lot of resources we're happy to share, whether you are for it, whether you're against it. Get involved in what is going on in West Virginia. Lastly, I think it's important to kind of repeat a little bit about what Beth said. Jobs and economic progress don't have to come at the cost of our existing economy. They definitely don't have to come at the cost of our health or the safety net of our home. To propose a project like this, so close to our home, our backyard, a project that's basically been shrouded in secrecy and redacted information, it's just fundamentally wrong.
Thank you, Shaena. So Amy, are you staying below the radar, or you have something to say too?
Yeah.
Okay. Come on up.
Everything.
It'll still be good.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us. My name's Amy Margolis. I live in Canaan Valley. I've been there about 10 years. And I think Beth and Shaena have really spoken a lot of feelings that I've had over the past year, which is the reason I'm here is not because I enjoy standing up in front of a lot of people, which I definitely do not. It's because I'm worried about my family and I'm worried about my community. And those are things that are really important to me because I love this place. And yeah, I've only been here for 10 years, but the thing about West Virginia and the people of West Virginia, it really gets to you. You know, the longer I'm here, the more I appreciate the people of West Virginia and the less I appreciate our representatives, unfortunately, not counting you. You know, I think, unfortunately, there's an aspect of this that is very much about money and politics, and it's very unsavory. And I think since we've covered a lot of the facts that have to do with the data and the science and the evidence, which is normally the place that I feel most comfortable because I'm a public health expert, that's my background. There's this like underbelly of what's happening, and that's happening all around the country. And I know folks read the newspaper, so you've seen it, which is this is a topic that is very politically volatile because it is happening all over the country, and it is happening against the will of communities. And what happens is we're being told that data centers are inevitable. They are not inevitable. That is a tactic to tell us we must accept this. And that if we oppose this in our homes, that we are against technology, we are anti-innovation, we are anti-economic development. None of those things are true. I can tell you, I see in this room people who are small business owners, who work for themselves, who are consultants, who work 4 jobs, 5 jobs, people in our own coalition. They are dedicated to making this economy work. They are dedicated to making the state move forward. They are dedicated to growing the state, to working on bringing population here. The challenge is this is not the answer that we want. And the decision is not being made by us. It's being made by folks in Charleston who are also taking all the money. So the problem is that we are the small communities taking on all of the costs. And we are not getting all the benefits. We are getting 30% of those benefits. So just remember that. That's the other piece of HB 2014 that is very important, is the money. Because that's the only reason anyone would even consider putting these type of facilities in their community, is just for the money. Because even Capito, all these people have said on the record, it's not about the jobs. We know it's not about the jobs, and we know the money is going to out-of-state corporations. So the question is, what is left? It's the tax revenue. So the state has already taken away a lot of the potential tax revenue by lowering things like property taxes on these facilities. Our small business owners don't get that same luxury. But on say we have so many amazing businesses and small businesses in West Virginia that are not getting support from Charleston. They're not getting these type of subsidies. They're not getting the tax breaks. They're not getting the time with free PR from all of our lawmakers. The reality is there are great people here who have great businesses, and they're not getting the great breaks. They're not getting the red carpet. They're not getting the rollback of environmental regulations that this industry is getting. And I think as a community, we have to look at that clearly and say, what does that mean for us? Who is really benefiting? And I think when you take a step back and see who is benefiting from these projects, that it's not just a private question. You know, it's not a question of we're doing something on private property. It's not your business. It is our business because it's drawing on our resources. It's drawing on our water. It's drawing on every resource around us, the air, the land. All of these things are burdens on our small community. And the reason they come here is because they think that we are pushovers. They think that rural communities will not stand up because there are not enough of us. We don't have the connections. We can't stand up to this wave. And we will. And that's what's been happening across the country. You see that nearly half of these facilities that have been proposed have been pushed back by communities who said, you know what, thanks, but no thanks. And that is our right as Americans, is to stand up and say, we have self-determination, we have autonomy. This is our choice as a community. We don't have to accept this just because people come in with more money or power. We can stand up to that and say, no, thank you.
Not bad for some unprepared remarks. Yeah, I just want to thank Beth, Shaena, and Amy, and all of Tucker United for the things that they do. They have been on the forefront of trying to protect our community, our health, our well-being, our livelihood, our future. And I'd like a round of applause for Tucker United. Amazing to have watched that group be spawned out of nothing to what they've become. It's truly, truly amazing. I know that there's at least one candidate here, Deborah Stiles.
Did you get a hold of Mr. Mosley?
I sent an email, but I haven't gotten any response. I've sent invitations to all the candidates that are running for county commission and for the House of Delegates District 85. So let's see, we don't have anybody else here then other than Deborah.
It might be just because I don't want to repeat what maybe our guest from fundamental data could go first and then I can follow up. And if Mr. Mosley's on his way, then
We'll give him a chance to get here.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. So there's always two sides to every story. And we'll probably hear another side of it right now. But I'm going to go ahead and invite Scott, if you'd like to come up from Fundamental Data and talk a little bit about what you're doing in this project. And then later, Scott and I and other people will be available to answer questions during the Q&A. So thanks. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Pleased to be here, Scott Weiland, on behalf of Fundamental Data. Listen, your community organization and your emotion on this issue is really to be admired. It's really kind of the backbone and the heart of local government in the United States. The nation said it's important for us to be a leader, globally in AI. And some states have reacted with disinterest, and other states have welcomed the idea of being part of that large capital investment in new technology. It's so big in scope in terms of dollar investment that people liken it to the Industrial Revolution, or at least the rollout of the national highway system. It's really a very large scope. And like it or not, I guess our rival is perceived to be China, where what they've done is, in advance, really, or in anticipation of a great need for energy, have created many generation stations, and they have just an abundance of generated power available to them. So when they go to install data centers or robotic production facilities, power is not a constraint at all. In our nation, I think we've kicked the can down the road for a very long time as a matter of energy policy on new generation. And PJM, the entity that runs our grid here and in 13 states, has a system where they do advanced auctions of power sales to try to predict what the power market is like. And the lights have been flashing bright red for some time that we are, undersupplied in the United States in general for power. That lack of keeping up with some slow, steady growth is clashing now with this sudden market demand for lots and lots of power. The fundamental data, we took a look at that, and what we prognosticated a few years ago is that the available power was going to be sucked up rather quickly by small data center projects that you're seeing announced all over the country. And they make an application to the local electric distribution company, and they say, we want to be a customer. And, there's some calculations done, and the electric company for now says, okay, we think we can serve your load. And maybe that'll be true in a year or two, or maybe it won't be. But the quality and the reliability of those representations by the existing power companies is becoming worth less in the marketplace. So we saw the solution as bring your own power. And indeed, the United States and many states have adopted this now. This idea that we happened upon a few years ago and really believed in, and it looks like it's coming true. The idea is we don't want data centers to drive up people's electric power prices and the retail level of residential customers. So the federal government, through the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and states are trying to create incentives to bring their own power to new large loads. Just a couple of days ago, the PUC came out with a tariff that basically said all the costs of new generation for new data centers has to be, paid for by the data centers themselves. All that is sort of the backdrop to why fundamental data does what it does, which is trying to meet the needs of data computing with power. That has very little to do with what you are feeling very passionate about, which is the location of this facility. I want to make sure that Mayor Alvin made a good point here, which is when you're in your room talking to yourselves and sort of fomenting your own point of view, it becomes more and more impassioned, and you don't get to hear the other side of things. And so I think there's, in a lot of cases, some reassuring that we can give you. But I'm concerned that, of course, no matter how much reassurance that we give you about the safety and the quality of the facility here, it's not going to be enough because you don't want it. So, West Virginia apparently faced that head on by taking just the way it operates sort of within the whole PJM. Everybody wants to be able to turn on their electric heat in their house at 4 a.m. in February and have the heat work. But where do they want their power to come from? No one wants coal plants. No one really wants any new generation or to live anywhere near it. So no matter where you stick a pin in the map, there's going to be a group saying, well, we don't want it here, but we want the electricity. We want to be able to stream Netflix on the computing side. We want to be able to store our photos. We want to be able to use AI. Okay. All right. We don't want to use AI. So, yeah.
Let's be respectful. Let's not talk. We will have a chance to ask questions and talk about these points at the end. Let's stop talk right now. Be respectful.
I appreciate that, Al. The heckler's veto is we don't want to hear what you have to say. That's fine. We're here to listen primarily today. I heard a lot already. We have some responses for that. I try to give you our background from a business standpoint, which is, something that, again, is somewhat irrelevant to your points of view. You did bring up good points. A lot of them, most of them, all of them are points that we thought of when we have our own positions on. So what I'd like, from our perspective, what would be most useful is for us to envision a time 5 years from now when this project hypothetically is in operation and you stand in the middle of the street and you tell it's here. Can you tell it's on? Can you tell it's operating? And tell us what your main concerns are. And then maybe during the Q&A period, we'll have an opportunity to kind of respond to those things on a point-by-point basis. Again, unlikely to have you cheering for me the way you did for Amy, who's a great speaker. But maybe we can give you a little bit of the opposite point of view and show you the business reasons why we think that this makes sense. All right. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. We appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. As I said earlier, there's always two sides to everything. The point that I want to reinforce, and Amy talked about it, and Beth and Shaena, is that it's not just whether we see it, we hear it, we touch it, we feel it. We're going to be breathing it. And that's really the problem. I am a big proponent of advocating for data centers. I was in the national security environment for many, many years. I recognize the importance of the competitiveness that we have to keep with our country and the rest of the world. I get it. But there needs to be the right place to do it. And when you talk about power generation in support of AI, I understand that part of it too. But again, it's where you put it. To put a power plant right next to Davis and Thomas and the Thomas Davis Elementary Middle School is not the right place. There are right places. I've been to China. I see how they work. They're a communist country. They do exactly what they want, when they want it, where they want it, irrespective of anything else. Whole villages will get displaced and moved to other places, and they do it when they're building roads, when they're building factories, when they're building power plants. So I don't want to be like China. And that goes back to, what this country represents. We're a free country, we're a democratic nation, and we should be listening to our constituents, the people that live here, and our voices matter. And right now, very clearly, what I hear is that our voices are saying, this isn't the right place for this power plant. Maybe it's 12 miles down the road to the east. Maybe it's, in Grant County or somewhere else. I don't know. But I do know this is not the right place for many, many reasons. And, we'll debate those for a long time and we'll see what happens. But right now, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Deborah. She's going to talk a little bit. She's running for House of Delegates, District 85. She wants to be our representative. She just won the Democratic primary, and congratulations to her.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson, and thank you to everybody who came out this afternoon. I will be asking a few questions of you all in my time. First, I would like to ask the question, who all here is a resident of Tucker County? Raise your hand. Who is a resident of Grant County?
We don't want the biggest Senate either. We don't. Don't block central law program.
And who is a resident of neither Tucker nor Grant? Okay. All right, thank you. My name is Deborah Stiles, as Al mentioned, and I was born and raised in West Virginia. I graduated as the first part of the first graduating class here at Tucker County High School in 1979, and then I went off into the world like many West Virginians do, and became a poet, a farmer, and a rural and ag policy researcher, as well as a humanities professor. In 2021, in response to the deaths and illnesses in my family, I decided to come home. It was initially a temporary type of situation, but I fell in love again in two ways, with a Pennsylvanian who puts up with my West Virginia quirks, such as loving cornbread better than he does, as well as falling in love with these roads, which as a child, when I was driving around with my dad, who was county extension agent, I learned to love these curvy roads. Now, when I asked about the population that we have in this room, I want to say that I was part of 5 candidates in the primary, and there were a number of different positions that were presented as part of the primary contest. I am personally opposed to a data center being placed in Tucker County. I am personally opposed to that. The reasons I am opposed to that are threefold. Number one, because when you look at the current research on data centers, as has already been discussed, and more recently, we see communities such as Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, Fort Worth in Texas, they are pushing back because they recognize that while we do, for national security reasons, need to get our act together as a country and as communities, we need to approach development carefully, and especially this type of development where there will be consequences, where there are significant downsides, such as the health concerns. I'll tell you, my PhD is in history. It was rural and gender history, but it was also a reality of my program that I was taught by labor historians. So I think that is why I am endorsed by the United Mine Workers of America, why I'm endorsed by the AFL-CIO and Education West Virginia, the teachers union. Because my farm is on Limestone Mountain. How many people, let me see a show of hands, how many people have been on Limestone Road? Yeah, there have been a few people, thank you. We all know in this room that there is the mountain and then there is the rest of the county, where people, if you go to the 1970s newspapers, they were fighting for their union jobs and they lost, and the woolen mill went out, and the tanneries left. All of these working class jobs left, as they did across America. And now, at the height of globalization,
We have supply chain interruptions and nobody can get anything that's made here. So that is why I have been telling people while campaigning, it is not enough to oppose, we have to propose. And what I have been doing is proposing that we have brainstorming sessions, figure out how we can fix the tax code so that we help our small businesses, how we can make our education system more accountable so that the outcomes improve, as well as we get our young people ready to embrace the future in all its diversity and be able to stay here or be able to bring people here. In another jurisdiction where I worked, we found, just as we found here, that there are a number of people who retire early for whatever reason in their 50s, like I was able to because of a union pension, and they want to be someplace else. And they find a place and they love it. And this is a story we've heard again and again in Tucker County. So what I am proposing is that, and please pay attention to social media, get a poster for me so you have my website information. I am proposing that we start figuring out what we can divert from the landfills across this region, not just in this area, not just Tucker County landfill, divert things that are being thrown away, whether it be chicken waste, whether it be hides, whether it be wool, that's waste wool that is not getting put into the global commodity market, and turn these things into other products. Government can't do it all, but I, as your representative of both Tucker and Grant County, and keep in mind that the lion's share of the votes are in Grant County. So I'm going to need everyone to stand behind me as I talk respectfully, let's emphasize that, to our neighbors in Grant County and say, what do you all want? What is workable for you? I will say that at a nonpartisan meet and greet candidates forum, someone came up afterward and said to me, I can't support you because I am on the Republican Executive Committee, but I will support this idea. And I've heard that again and again, that there may be differences among us, but we can get better representation in Charleston if we ask the hard questions, respectfully listen, and figure out a way forward. Whether it's to stop this entirely, such as what has happened in Fort Worth and Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, or whether we, work out some other compromise with our neighbors to the east. I don't have the answer to that. I can't. But I will tell you that I will work like HELL toothpicks, because I'm not going to cuss during this campaign. I will work hard to represent the entire district. The entire district, to be fair and ethical and equitable, to make sure that we have a future for this beautiful place that my family has been privileged to call home for generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah.
Sorry to take the mic again. There are a few things that have not come up in this meeting that I think are very important for everyone to hear if you don't know them yet. One of the things is that what has not been addressed yet, or one of the many things that has not been addressed yet, is a potential impact on our water. So I want to highlight the fact that both Thomas and Davis have both had water shortages the last several years. Highlight the fact that data centers are highly dependent on water in most cases, although there are other systems. But we can anticipate that we need to be thinking about that as a potential. Another thing that's very important, one of the things that you mentioned was the idea that maybe you won't even notice that these are here. So the power plant and the data centers. So that is hard for me to believe, but I'm willing to listen to what you have to say about that. What you need to know about that is that by the modeling for the dispersion, so for the air pollutants to go up into the air, those smokestacks by good practice estimates should be about 213 feet tall. That is way taller than any tree around here. There is a good map that was done about where we would be able to see those smokestacks, whether it's or stacked or stacks, but they should be at least that tall. Otherwise, fundamental data will be releasing these contaminants at ground level, which will significantly increase our exposure. That is very scary. So it is very scary for me to hear you say that when that is taken into account. But again, I'm willing to listen for sure. And I'm glad that you're here and that it's genuine. If the stacks are not that tall, those tanks will be 60 feet tall. Again, that is higher than almost every tree in this area. So that is really significant. And the last thing I want to say, although there are many, many, many things that we should be talking about with this power plant, is that location is heavily undermined. So we have legacy coal mining in this area. We think about 30 million gallons of diesel. We think about that being at the top of the watershed. So that's the very beginning of all these streams, these creeks that come together to become small rivers, that become together to become big rivers. That is the very top of the watershed, building a massive power plant and potentially data centers, we suspect, and that's been talked about already. So now we know that's actually true. Building these power plants with 30 million gallons of diesel on top of a heavily undermined site. That is scary. That has potential ramifications for us, that have potential ramifications for everybody who takes their drinking water from downstream, even large cities. So there are many, many, many things that we should talk about, right? And the fact that we may not be able to know that's here, it is hard to believe that. I think that is highly unlikely, but we also have to think about the impact on our economy. And so thinking about the 900 jobs that are associated with the tourism economy here. They're not all perfect, right? I have been in that place where I have been living out of my truck and working like tourism or service jobs. And so I've been there. And so we can do better. But if we take away our source of income and our source of our economy, that totally and drastically shifts both the aesthetics and what we love about this place and what is special about this place, but also our ability to have a supportive economy that's already here, and to take that away. So those are really important things. Water, aesthetics, quality of life, undermining of the site that could be not physically safe to put those tanks, literally. Are very, very, very important. So, and then the height of those stacks as well. Thank you.
So I wanted to mention that I don't think there's any other candidates that are here, but Mike Rosenell and John Bush both sent me emails yesterday saying that they couldn't be here because of family commitments and work commitments, or they would have been here and they wanted to be here. So I do want to make that point clear. The other thing that I wanted to share, it's something that I hope Fundamental can take away from this conversation. When I was in the Pentagon as a senior executive, I had responsibility for about $32 billion worth of budgets and programs and 45,000 people in positions. And the thing that I tried to communicate all the time to individuals in those jobs were that when we talk about positions, when we talk about money, a lot of it represents human beings, and we can't lose sight of that. So when you have, a company like Fundamental Data or other companies, it's not just a profit and loss equation. It's not just a return on investment calculation. You're also affecting the lives of human beings. And that's a hard thing to put a number on, but it's just as important to have that considered. And that's what we're hoping that, through meetings like this and other dialogue that we have, that, people will eventually, I think, refer to the softer side of their emotions and say, they really don't want this there because it's going to hurt them. And that gets factored into the decision making. Because right now, I don't think it is. I think it's a business decision. It's a natural gas pipeline location. It's things like that that have selected this particular site. And to say, well, it's next to a landfill, how bad can it be? Well, a landfill and a power plant are vastly different animals. So, those are things that we take away. But I'm going to go ahead and open it up to Q&A. I'm going to try, we don't have a,
Mention that.
oh yeah, and we have a Zoom link that people are signing into. And we also have the fact that the Zoom is being recorded. So you'll be able to see and watch and listen to this if you want to agonize through it yet another time. But it's available to you.
On the Friends of Blackwater YouTube channel.
It's on the Friends of Blackwater YouTube channel. So that's where you'll be able to find it. And we'll put the link on the Davis website too. So I'll open it up to questions and answers. We don't have oh, we do. Okay. Okay.
And we do have
We have a wireless mic and we have a runner, and she's got her sneakers on. So thank you, Chris. Chris, let's start with this lady right here in just a second. Small technical difficulty. This is where you get to watch me tap dance. I know. That's why you paid the big bucks to come in here.
1 second. Maybe we can start with a Zoom question while we're figuring out the mic.
Okay, let's
He
do
says
that.
we have a few questions. You wanna read?
Yes.
Let's
What
start
is
with the first.
what is Scott's role with fundamental data?
Scott, what's your role in fundamental
When
data?
I come up, or you want me to bring in like? Okay.
I'm just a representative of the company. I'm a lawyer by trade, and I'm involved with the organization in a business relationship. But beyond that, I'm here as a representative of the company, as is Lewis. So maybe I can start by a couple of A's to the Q's that we've had already. All right. Again, I want to make sure that your analysis here is based on fact. When you have an absence of fact, you tend to assume the worst. Anybody who's ever been waiting for a doctor's test result knows what I'm talking about, that pasteurization. Here's a good example. The tanks, the 30 million gallons of diesel fuel. When the permit is submitted to DEP, you have to put in sort of your maximum parameters of operation and backup fuel, which is what we did. There's never an intention to fill 10 million gallon tanks with diesel fuel. And the way our permit works, diesel fuel burns and emits at a rate 3 times more than natural gas. So we have a great incentive not to. So of course we're looking at alternative fuels like gas as a backup, stored gas as a backup. So don't assume that there's going to be 30 million gallon tanks full of diesel. We never said that. That's what is permitted in the permit if it's granted that way, but that's not what our operational standards would be. Another thing is this PM 2.5 report that you've had. So it's important too, I think, whenever you critically analyze any writing, to ask who wrote it, what was their potential bias, or what was the purpose of the report. It's not an objective review of the science. It is an advocacy piece that makes a lot of assumptions, and they're not conservative assumptions. They assume that all of the facilities will be running wide open 24/7. And they also make just a lot of assumptions about exposure. This kind of report is something that is not anything new. We've seen it before, and it has sort of these telltale indicators of being exaggerative. And how do you know that? Well, the national ambient air quality standards are established by federal regulators. They're adopted and enforced at the state level. And they determine that, it'd be nice to have pristine, clear air in the United States with no emissions whatsoever, but we would all freeze to death. So they try to answer the question, how much in the way of emissions is not dangerous? And that's the basis on which all the permits are evaluated and granted. But the methodology of this particular report is to say, well, let's look at the chances of a particular emission level from this facility having any kind of ill effect on, let's say, the 6,500 people or so in Tucker County. Well, the chances of harm are so tiny that it yields statistically zero deaths, zero illnesses. So what does the methodology do? It draws the circle big. It says, well, this will disperse further. So you make the circle bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Do we have a death yet? Well, no, that chance of harm is still tiny compared to the population that we captured in our circle. Well, let's make the circle even bigger. When you get to 250,000 people inside the curtain or inside the circle, then statistically, spreadsheet magic, you get to the number one, which is one person will statistically be harmed by the emission. And then the federal government uses this very arbitrary number, VSL, the value of a statistical life, not a real life, not a real live person going to the hospital or losing their employment. It's a methodology that the federal government uses just to analyze the cost benefit analysis of particular legislation. So they put a dollar number on it, and magically that's how you get to $12 million to $35 million. So that's not a study that's designed to be an objective statement. Yes, PM 2.5 is harmful. Yes, if you stood at the top of the smokestack and breathe it in, of course it's harmful. I'm not saying cigarettes don't cause cancer. But think of wood burning fireplaces, the gas stove in your house, gas fireplaces, coal-fired furnaces, wood pellet furnaces and stoves, oil-based, all of these things emit PM 2.5. All of them at rates higher than a highly efficient modern gas turbine that generates electricity, and all released very close to the surface of, within the first 20 feet, or however high your chimney is. So this isn't a pristine environment. The question that the regulators ask is, how much load of pollution will this emission add to what's already there? I remember going out west by invitation one time to ski in the winter time, and out in the Rockies, there's a small town there, and everyone had wood burning fireplaces. But when it was cold, they would tell everybody in town, don't burn anything, because the low level emissions from the fireplace that could hang in the air, and you maybe have seen that. So there are many, many sources of PM 2.5, tree falling, dust, windy days, etc. And then the question is, how much can this, add to the load? We don't make that question up. The regulators answer the question. The regulators do the analysis under the existing rules. And we just, we follow the rules that they set and the guidance that they set. That's what I want to say about that. Lewis, did you have a couple points of previously asked questions?
It takes two questions.
Yeah.
Questions, so that'll help Al moderate. So we have Lydia, we have Amy, we have Shaena. Did you want to say something, or we're gonna? I have a feeling you're gonna be answering more questions.
Oh, he's got Chris. You said Lydia, Amy, me.
I think Lydia was first. Was it you? Okay, go ahead.
Thanks for being here today. I appreciate that. My name is Patty Snow. I'm a full-time resident here in Canning Valley. I am a former resident of Loudoun County, Leesburg. I'm very familiar with data centers. I am familiar with the Stonewall Panda power plant. I'm also familiar with the new power plant, the microgrid grid that they built in Sterling. Now, Leesburg gets 96% of its water from the Potomac. And they supply the Stonewall Panda power plant with approximately 3 to 4 million gallons of water a day. So I am wondering, for your power plant facility, what water studies have you done for the watersheds? What are the impacts going to be to the aquifer? Are you planning on tapping mine pool water? I think we all deserve answers to those sort of things to the impact on our water.
Yeah. And Scott, you're welcome to stand up here. You're going to get a lot of questions.
Lewis and I will be passing this back and forth. Great questions. I had a lot of experience with aquifers and well construction, not a hydrogeologist, but I've had a lot of cases that involve questions like that. So, I mean, the short answer is we designed and did our thinking with zero impact to well water, the deeper aquifers, the aquifers that you would tap into for domestic well, and zero impact to surface waters as well, like streams and rivers. We're not withdrawing that. So let me give part of this is sort of our secret sauce about how we I mean, I think it's really creative design that's very low impact on water. And I'll let Lois disclose what he feels we should at this point. But I do want to say that that's something that we certainly took into consideration. Also, the usage of the water by these facilities is highly variable. And what I'm finding is that the design of the cooling systems for data centers in particular, and keep in mind, like we're creating a power center and a place to locate businesses. It so happens that data centers are the ones that want the power rights. But you know, in theory, it could be if you know, gold plating becomes some huge trend, and any energy intensive business could use the power there. The data center is just so energy intensive that it's, you know, almost a complete given that it's going to be a data center as opposed to something else at this moment in time. But in any event, if water is a constraint, the first constraint is power. And if that's solved, then the second constraint for data center location is water, and they would tailor their cooling needs to, you know, if there's not much water available, they can use closed loop systems that take the water directly to the chip for cooling and that sort of thing. Lewis, what more can you say about that?
If I was being specific to the power plant and,
Okay.
the Stonewall power plant,
Yes.
that uses the 3 to 4 million gallons cycle water. Now you're saying that you have a design, but have you done the studies? Have you done aquifer or watershed studies here? I mean, you have a design, but have you actually looked at the land and the aquifer? I'm treating.
So,
Where are you going to get that water?
so, yeah, I'm kind of like, so first of all, this is Lenny. I don't normally do public speaking, so much like Amy, I probably won't do it like she did, but, you know, this is not what I normally do. So, they usually keep me locked in my office. I think they let me out today, so, I'll do my best to try and give you guys some information. My role at Fundamental Data, among other things, is essentially a commercial lead. And I also oversee planning for the project. And so, you know, I'm probably the best guy to answer some of the detailed questions that you guys might have. As it relates to the water, we're still working through some of the details on where that water will be sourced. Our first preference is, in fact, mined water that we would intend to actually benefit some of the treatment of water that is in need of treatment that otherwise would be, you know, potentially polluting creeks. And so our first choice is to.
Yeah, that was not clear at all. Do you actually think that just the little more?
Yeah, sure. So
You said creeks,
my
those are two very.
well, yeah, the water currently in the mines in this area, what's going on is the water is being pumped from those mines, is being treated, and it's being released into the watershed. You know, plan A for us is we intercept that water in between where it's being already pumped from the mine. We circulate it through our system after it's treated, and then it goes right back. So it's like nothing ever happened. It's no disturbance to. I'm sorry?
Where does it get back to? Does it go
So yeah, it's I don't know the name of the place. It's maybe 3-4 miles to the west of here. There is this is already, you know, something that DEP is running facility that's sort of behind the Matiki mine area that's back there. I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't hear you.
The Kempton mine.
It's the Matiki mine is the mine that I'm referring to. I'm not aware of the Kempton mine or where that's located. I did want to, you know, this is slightly off topic from that. Well, actually, let me finish that up. So modern data centers that are being built right now are generally air cooled. Our power plant is also hybrid air cooled, and so our water usage is actually potentially quite low, and most of it's a closed loop system anyway. So it's basically just recirculating the same water all the time. There is a little bit of exterior cooling that we may use, and that's where the mine water would come into play. So long story short, we don't expect to impact the aquifers in this area in any way whatsoever.
Temperature of water, release it back. You're gonna release any of that water back in, underneath that.
It would be back to ambient before it was
It would
released.
be,
At whatever temperature it is now, it will be returned to that temperature.
you cool the water back down to surface water conditions.
Yes. Yeah.
How are you getting treated mine water from the Kempton mine pool over here?
Through pipes.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, those deals are still under consideration. And so one of the reasons I know you guys there's been a lot of concern about transparency. I just want to be clear that there are still dominoes that are falling with this project. Not everything, if we had planned that every detail was worked out, we would have rolled that out to everybody. And we will still roll it out to everybody when all the details are finalized. But we don't want to roll out a plan that says X, and then suddenly we've got to tell everybody, oh, forget about X, it's now Y. That would get probably more public opposition than we've already seen for.
Here?
These things take a lot of time.
Raise your hand. A lot of questions. So we do have a stack list, so I will walk around and take your name.
But before we go any further, there's one thing I definitely want to address that was talked about in the beginning that I wanted to disabuse a lot of confusion, and that's HB 2014. HB 2014 does not affect the Ridgeline project. Ridgeline was never subject to, it's not in a town, I mean, it's not in Davis, it's not in Thomas. There's no zoning, there are no land use restrictions for where Ridgeline is located whatsoever. HB 2014 has absolutely no effect on whether they're local control or not, or put it as local control or not of Ridgeline. It does affect potentially the split of monies. But we have nothing to do with that and no dog in that fight. That's up to the people of West Virginia, how you guys want to split up your tax revenue.
How loud is the power thing gonna be?
The best estimation that we have for ambient noise on site is about 90 decibels. We are 7,000 feet from the nearest structure. So we're not close, we're not next to a school. We're almost a mile and a half from all these structures. And through trees and for a mile and a half, you will not be able to hear the Ridgeline project. There's no way. I'm sorry?
Can you guarantee that? On the record?
I don't have expertise to guarantee these things, but I can tell you that under OSHA rules, we don't have to wear hearing protection on site. And there's no way you're going to hear something that you can't even hear a gunshot a mile and a half away.
Cheers.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you guys for coming. I've wanted to speak to you guys for a very long time, and actually I want to speak to you guys afterwards. On record. I'm Lydia Crawley from the Parsons Advocate. Going back to what you said, Scott, about the sources of energy for the project. At one point, Casey Chapman was quoted as saying in the future, there was a possibility of incorporating other alternatives, because you mentioned alternatives. Is the possibility still on the table for nuclear?
So yeah, there are currently 3 stages of the overall Ridgeline project. They're in planning. You guys know about phase 1. There are other phases. They're not co-located on this site, however. There's a site in Grant County that's part of the project, and on that site there is nuclear under consideration.
Okay, next up on the stack is Amy. And then we're gonna people online have Zoom, you're up after Amy. Look, you'll read a question after Amy.
I'm sorry to get into the weeds here, but I was trying to resist my public health personality coming out. But I'm just a little curious, and I do thank you all for coming. We've been waiting for a year, and I think if we've made any assumptions, that's because we've had no information, despite repeated.
Well, you have my phone number and I've texted with you in the past.
The amount of information you provided with me, it's not been.
I've answered every question you've asked.
Well, I saw that it was, anyway, I'm not gonna get into that. The point is, I just wanted to say one thing on what you were saying about the report, which is, first, I guess my curiosity is, you're speaking about the value of the statistical life. So I'm just curious, what is your background in epidemiology, biostatistics, public health? Like you said, you're a lawyer. So do you have any training in public health?
Yeah, cross-examined experts for 30 years on a variety of topics, so.
Wait, so what is your, no, I just,
So-
wait, let it answer that.
It's the structure of the argument that's presented that you tend to challenge it to look at objectively. Ask who's writing this, why is it being written, who's paying for it to be written.
So the reason why I asked is.
You know,
Mhm.
and they're taking a small risk and applying it to a very large sample size until you.
Okay, I just wanted to answer what your training in public health was. So I guess I just bring it up because originally we didn't go to Harvard originally. We went to the DEP and we said, you're the state environmental organization. Could you please do this analysis for us? And they said, we don't have to. And we said, can you? And they said, we can, but we don't have to. And so we had a dead end there because we were worried about our families. So we didn't go out into this saying, oh, we're going to find someone who's going to write the report that we want. So instead, we went and found the best experts in the country on this question in air pollution modeling. And they use the same statistical analyses that everyone in the country uses in the public health community. And I'm glad I got it on video because I would love to send it to my professors to show it. There's someone who thinks that the value of statistical life is some sort of magical number. This is widely accepted in all of the literature and all of the evidence. Everyone uses it. It's not one partisan side or another or advocates. It's just what's in the science. And so when you do any kind of modeling, whether it's dispersion modeling, whether anything, you have to make assumptions, just like you make assumptions in business. These things are based on assumptions, and you have to say, I will assume that 3 years from now, this is going to be the value of my business, just like you would with the value of statistical life. These are widely accepted things in the literature. So I just want to make that point, and I'm not trying to attack you personally. I'm just saying this is not. We went out trying to get information because we were not provided with it. And our role as community members is we tried to find the best people in the country to do the analysis that is objective and they 100%. We did not interfere with anything they did. They did the analysis, they gave us the report. That was the relationship. And we will continue to build the evidence on these questions because we want to know the answer. And when we ask questions, that are not answered in a clear way to say, oh, there are a couple more dominoes to fall. Well, we don't want to be the domino. We don't want to answers.
Okay, if you want to go to the front, that might be easier. Look, do you have a mic to do? Sure.
I do not.
Okay, I'll bring it to you. We have a lot of, oh, we do have a mic.
Testing. All right, we have a Zoom question here. This is for Scott. In addition to the proximity to schools and towns, you propose to put this in the middle of a thriving tourist economy. Why here? I'll repeat the question.
The question is why here, given its proximity, et cetera. I think the idea is that the National Ambient Air Quality Standards Program has all the science that Amy referred to baked into it. You go to the regulator and say, is this a safe emission under this permit program in this location? And in this case, the regulator came back and said yes. And when the Air Quality Board reviewed it, including the testimony from the California expert on behalf of Tucker United and the other appellants, the Air Quality Board agreed with the DEP's analysis. So they're the experts of your government. They're the experts that have spent years and years and years creating the national ambient air quality standards analyzing the amount of load into the community from each additional source, and then the effect on public health. And at some point, yes, you get to a point in a non-attainment area where there are already 6 power plants that another power plant cannot be sustained and will not maintain the national ambient air quality standards. In this case, the answer is that yes, it can. And one more, if you want to believe that the study that you commissioned and paid for is the, objective truth, I think you need to understand that there's a glaring omission in that report. That report would never be admissible in court. It just doesn't meet the scientific standards of a proper analysis. One glaring omission is, where is all of the existing load from people's fireplaces and gas stoves and wood pellet stoves and all that sort of thing? That's already in the air here. The question that the permit people answer is, what effect on health is there to an additional unit? And there are probably between 200 and 300 minor permits like this issued and approved by West Virginia's DEP every year.
By the way, the analysis that was originally done on the size of our plant is not correct. This is an 860 megawatt natural gas fired combined cycle power plant facility, not 1600.
Okay, we have
I thought I'd throw that out there because there's been so much misinformation. Yeah, it's 860 megawatts. It's been widely reported in the media as 1600 and change. That is not correct.
And that was in the permit, that was one of the questions. Was that on the permit, was 1600 or 800?
The nominal capacity of the plant is not part of the permit application.
So that wasn't.
No, it is not.
Thanks.
Okay, we have another question from Sarah.
Answer question from online. That's fine.
There are quite a few attributes and why you would cite a project in this location. So, first of all, to run a natural gas plant, you need gas. The mayor pointed out that this is co-located with natural gas pipeline, so that's certainly part of it. Because of Ridgeline, there are some aspects about the project that we haven't made public up to this point, and it is a pretty large project. What it is approaching 10,000 acres in total size. It is not contiguous. There are multiple pieces that are sort of spread throughout Tucker and Grant County. So the availability of large quantities of land was key to this. You're about 99 miles from the key internet switching point in Ashburn, Virginia. So proximity to that is pretty key for us. Happens to run on the trunk or be located on the trunk line that connects Ashburn with another major hub in Columbus, Ohio. Ample water resources, friendly state, notwithstanding the crowd here. And so those are some of the primary criteria. The laws are favorable to data center and power plant development.
I guess I wanted to just expand a little bit on the question of why here. Why not 12 miles to the east? Why right next to Davis and Pine?
You mentioned, or somebody mentioned undermining. So it turns out that the gas plant site is one of the few places in this area that is actually not undermined. So the notion that these tanks might be on undermined property is in fact the exact reason why it is there, as opposed to lots of the other places that it could have been to the east that you might prefer it to be. So we need stable ground for this type of facility.
This area.
Hi, my name is Sarah Stonecipher. I'm a full-time resident here in Tucker County. I actually just bought a house in Davis, probably a couple months before you guys announced this. The whole reason why I live here in Tucker County is because I have a daughter with cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic degenerative lung disease. One of the best chances that she has is living up here and the medicines that she has received. honestly, most of you guys know her. She's just like any other 13-year-old girl. I'm highly concerned that the fine particulate matter is going to affect her health and her lung function overall. But another thing that I wanted to address here is you said that it would be partially air cooled as well. Is that right?
That's right.
Does that mean that we're at risk for a heat island? And is that going to affect our snow and or our tourist economy?
That's the first I've ever heard of the concept of a heat island, so.
Get online, honey.
No.
Would you be willing to look into that?
Sure, I'll look into it.
Okay, I hope that the two of you and a few folks who know about it, that I'm sure they will stay and be happy to talk to you, or we can figure out how to keep that communication going. Yeah, that's, Loki, you have a mic, want to, get a question from? We have a lot of people online, how many? We have a lot of questions.
We have a good amount.
Okay.
How many full-time employees does fundamental data have?
So the expectation for job creation up here is approximately 5,000 jobs during construction.
Not
period.
job creation. Not job
No,
creation.
I'm not here to talk about fundamental data's management team, fundamental data.
Okay, well then we'll move on.
Fundamental data's
We
revenue.
can move on.
Like none of that's important to the people here, or it shouldn't be. It's not appropriate.
Next question.
Who is building the transmission lines to connect all these data centers?
That's part of the scope that we would be developing.
So, first,
Okay, we have a family affair coming. It's a two-part question. If you've been in town, you've probably eaten at their restaurant.
Multiple questions for both you guys. You said that 2014 doesn't apply to this at all. So that means our county commission could go in and fight this and right and raise our taxes for you, raise everything out there against you guys.
Well, what I mean by HB 2014 has no effect is if had HB 14 not been passed, we would still be building the plan under the exact same plan that we currently have. In fact, we applied for the permit before HB 2014 was passed. I'll ask again then.
Again, since you said it does not apply, that came out of your mouth. I heard,
Yeah,
we all heard. Our county commission can't go in and change that law now for you.
Well, the county commission can't change HB 2014. That's passed.
You said that affects us up here. You said it did not affect us up here.
I'm not understanding your question, sir.
If you said HB 2014 does not affect you or this county, our county commission cannot go in there and make a thing that we don't all want to data center in this county.
HB 2014 does not enable or disable or have any effect on our ability to build Ridgeline. That's what I'm saying, sir.
Okay, I've got a handful of questions I want to ask before I have to get back to work. But so I heard you right that you said Harvard was wrong, one of the best universities in the country, and they're wrong on the.
I think they're wrong on a lot of things, but it's actually Scott that said that.
Okay.
I think the author was a paid consultant who maybe was educated at Harvard, but the idea was, he was paid as a consultant in I think a fairly new consulting business, and then authored this paper. So that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, you could pick your well, you don't pick.
Happy to answer the questions, but he has the talking stick right now, so we're gonna let him talk, and then we'll answer.
Quick on my questions, really quick on these questions. It's been repeated here, but why was secrecy? Why did Casey Chapman here? Why did you wait a year before you came to speak to the people in this town?
Well, for one thing, some people in this room have made threats against Casey Chapman. And so Casey is not super motivated to come here and be threatened by the people in this room.
Awesome. So this isn't unique. This is a tense situation, and it would have been a lot less tense if you guys had just come and spoken to us, even if you didn't have all the details. Just show up and talk to us like human beings.
Yeah, before this was ever thing, he was never threatened.
And we have been threatened. That's not feel good.
But I mean, you're lawyers, so like you could threaten lawyers. It shouldn't be a big deal.
Yes, I'm more comfortable with it than Casey.
But I also need to point out, you're saying the people in this room have threatened Casey Chapman.
I'm not going to name names, but I'm aware of at least one threat from at least one person I've seen in this room tonight.
So let's make sure that we're clarifying that that's not people in this room.
It's
that
people,
you know,
one person.
One person that I know about.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm gonna finish up these last two questions. You all from Fundamental Data, would you put your kids at that school I have?
I would, sir, yes.
Nice.
Because now listen,
Yeah.
listen, I grew up in Charles Plains, West Virginia. And there's FMC and there's Union Carbide and everything, now you guys can talk about the laws, how West Virginia is fantastic for you guys. Well, I came up here to get out of that. It's nasty.
Yeah.
It's nasty, you got both, you got, what happens to that, how? Union Carbide was down here. You had a catastrophe. People live here because they want to be healthy. It's a look at these people, okay? You're up here dealing with that. They don't want to breathe it. Do you consider that? The other thing with the model. So you can't say that now. You can't say because they don't care. They don't care.
With all due respect, sir,
I'm sorry.
with all due respect, you don't really know what I care about and what I don't care about. You don't know me and I don't know you. No, man, that's not correct.
Okay, let's keep it civil and let's do another online question.
We have 7 minutes, we got a lot of people in the room. The questions are coming in through Zoom, they already have.
Okay,
Share them with you guys.
all right, who do you got next?
So, I have one question. And we have-
Last question I'm asking, you're building out there, or you're wanting to build out there because of the salvage tax, it comes with it, they're gonna reclaim mine land. Are you willing to give up that salvage tax and pay tax like everybody in this room paying right now?
So I'm actually not aware of what you're talking about, but our expectation is that we're paying full property tax rates. We're not expecting any subsidies. If there's any subsidy associated with that property currently, I'm sure we will lose it when we build this plant. So that, I don't think we're getting any tax. In fact, I know we're not getting any tax breaks. What I can tell you is our estimate that Tucker County will get from the phase 1 ridgeline is $27 million a year in new tax revenue. Current budget for Tucker, that's even after the 30%, 70-30 split. So the amount of investment here is really significant. Tucker County's current budget is, I think, $8 million a year. We're talking about 27 million new dollars per year for the foreseeable future coming into Tucker County's local government. Good. Hello?
And our water. I was gonna talk about water.
Do we have any more questions? I have a question.
Information on salvage tax, again, we're taking notes from the summer, how to get that to Robbie, it's just all this summer,
Yeah, I actually, Lewis and Scott, I do have questions about the integrity of fundamental data.
We're not going to address those kind.
Well, I was doing some looking around. You guys had a job posted on LinkedIn several months ago. You didn't have a website. So I noticed that within the past month or two, you did get a website, but it is a one-page website built on a free WordPress theme that has basically nothing, like in my opinion, like $100 Fiverr website. How come and you guys say, Scott, you said this, notes, absence of facts. So there are a lot of facts. If you look at the Monarch project, which is what over there, you can see the full line of everybody with the company. You look at the Pinson project over in Berkeley County, you can see everybody on the board. There's transparency. We know who these people are. If you break down and look at their websites too, they're a little more sophisticated than a blank about them with nothing about you. So how, as a person in this community, am I supposed to trust you when you are putting out something that is honestly, it's not there. There is no information about you. Because I did go through your whole thing when you had a job on LinkedIn, and there wasn't even a website. There was nothing about fundamental data. So why are you guys I mean, I'm big into marketing. I like being the purple elephant in the room. But how come you're hiding everything? Why is everybody else in this industry completely transparent with their boards, with who's involved with this company, and you guys have nothing? Thank you for your comments, sir. Answering? No, I'm not going to answer you. That's who we're dealing with. You started with. Hey. I'll answer the question about the facts of the project. That is the relevant subject community.
Hey, Chris?
Yeah.
We're running out of time.
Matt, you got a good question for us? Okay. All right.
I do want to thank you for coming. You fault us for not having the facts. I think that was it. Either well, I forget which of you said that. You said we have the wrong facts. The report is wrong. We don't understand. Do you think one of the reasons for that is that you have been so opaque with this community that you have not showed up here to talk to us until a year after we learned about it? That you've redacted all the critical information from your air quality permit? Is there a chance that the reason that we don't have the facts that you think we should is because you have not been transparent enough with us?
So I will confess that we probably should have came sooner and talked to the community. However, the information that's redacted from our permit application has nothing to do with the emissions that are affecting the community. It has to do with how many turbines we had, how we're running them, and how we're frankly keeping the power on 24/7, which we've all acknowledged is what's necessary to run a data center. You have to have the power on 24/7. There are competitive pressures in the market about how you're able to do that. And we don't want to show our competition all the details about how we're keeping the power on 24/7. Well, that's the reason for the redaction.
Okay. Well, in the spirit of good faith, you say that it's not going to be 30 million gallons of diesel. How many gallons is it going to be?
So if we use diesel fuel, we'll store 20 million gallons, which is 2 tanks. We have 1 tank in reserve for a spare. Because, please let me finish. The whole point of this is to ensure the environmental protection in case there were ever a leak from one of the tanks, we would have a spare tank to move it into. Part of the siting for the project was, in fact, to ensure that it's not in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, which if we moved to the east, we would be in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and there'd be more environmental considerations with storage of fuel. But what we're hoping to do, and we're working on this as we speak, is to actually store liquid natural gas, which would evaporate and not contaminate anything if there ever was a spill. We're also going to have basins to protect against any spills. And so, like, we are pretty concerned about the diesel. I want to be honest and say, like, we're worried about that too. We're trying to make sure that there is absolutely no chance the community could ever be impacted by that diesel.
So last question, in the spirit of right facts and good faith, will you commit to coming to our next town hall too?
I mean, I'm committed to continuing to engage the community. If it's something I can attend, probably so. Yeah.
And if the report is bad, will you commit to funding an alternative report that meets your spec?
I'll have to. I don't know about that. Like maybe
think about it. It might be
I think these reports are silly. There's power plants all over the country that are less efficient. They're making more environmental, emissions than what we're planning on doing. And, like we're just dropping a bucket. Like it's all one big atmosphere. Yeah, this is from Mount Storm that are probably 10x what our emissions are. And that's,
10,000 acres of land?
Yeah, but not there's not 10,000 acres of power plants. A lot of that's solar. That's solar. Solar is the predominant land use, yes.
So I wanted to say that we're grateful you're here. And you didn't walk out. And we've had, a long time this is built up. So I appreciate you being here. There's a lot of questions. We can get those questions to you. We want to keep the conversation going. And this is a strong, proud community. And we welcome people here. That's how, that's who we are here. And so we want to keep it that way. So please understand that this is a very passionate and it's fighting for our lives. So
I do understand, and I appreciate that, and frankly, I don't begrudge, the concerns that you guys have. I think it's all reasonable to have these concerns. And, I do wanna try to, filter out more information about exactly what we're doing. A lot of it, frankly, is gonna surprise you guys. I know you guys think we're terrible people, but we honestly have environmental protection in our mind as we're considering this project. We really do. A lot of the aspects of it are designed to minimize, potential environmental impacts.
Patient, if you agree to that?
Absolutely.
Okay, Claire?
I'm Claire Anderson. I'm a resident of Tucker County. I live in Davis. Given the lack of information that we've had, there have been a few things that you said today that I think are either new or confirmed that we didn't necessarily know. So if I can just go back through what I think I heard you say, just for clarity of some of those core components, if you would indulge.
Sure.
So the power plant is not 1600 megawatts, it's 800 megawatts.
860.
860 megawatts. You plan on having 2 tanks with 20 million gallons of diesel with potential for having that as natural gas, and 1 additional tank that would be used for overflow to prevent spills with a basin.
Yeah, that's right.
Your end user here is data centers.
Yes, ma'am.
Data centers. And you anticipate 10,000 acres of data centers, or did I just hear you say that some portion of that land is for solar power?
Approximately 1,500 acres would be devoted to ultimately data center buildings. About 300 acres to power generation, and the balance of our site, and I don't remember the total acreage off the top of my head, but the balance of that would be devoted to solar.
And there are 3 phases. Before today, knew about phase 1. Phase 2 would be located in Grant County with nuclear as the possible power source.
Phase 2 would be potentially a second gas plant. Phase 3 would include the nuclear plant, if ultimately that's feasible.
And I don't think that we know the total acreage for the 3 phases, unless that's the 10,000.
That's the acreage I'm giving you is for all the phases.
For all 3 phases. And the end user, your buyer, your data center buyer, we don't have that information.
Correct.
Because you don't have it and there's no buyer, or because there's a buyer and you're not willing to disclose the buyer?
I can't even disclose the answer to that question, I'm afraid.
And generally speaking, we understand that the buyers of data centers, and that may not be the right way to actually describe that, are Meta, Google, Amazon, Microsoft.
Those are some common names that use data centers.
Common names, but there may be others, right? Who are generally owned by the billionaire class.
Well, some of them are owned by billionaires. Some of them are public companies that made people into billionaires, but are technically owned by, broader audience of people.
True. And then we also have the landowners, national resource partners, who are also of the wealthy class, who are participating in this alongside you all as well. So I guess I just would end this by saying we are not billionaires, but our lives are infinitely valuable. And there's no price to our lives and to our health. And Ryan, who has, I think, left in angst, made an important point, which is that we all came here or are from here to get away from the ill effects of extractive corporations and health erosion of pollutants and other ill effects. And we implore you to move on.
So just a couple of closing remarks, and I do appreciate Scott and Louis for being here. It really makes a difference. It's really opened up the conversation quite a bit, and well, hopefully that'll continue in the long run. I do want to say something that I remember about the Harvard study, and that was that they used the EPA modeling. So it wasn't, a random thing that Harvard was doing. They were using what the EPA does for modeling of dispersion modeling. So I think there's a lot of validity to that study, and we can debate that for a long time. Do you guys all know what nepotism is?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what it looks like to be a scared husband?
Yes, sir.
In the interest of the fact that I said we had the last question, I'm going to ask the First Lady what she wanted to say, because she had her hand up.
I wanted to ask the gentleman if in fact they are aware of other power plants and data centers being placed smack in the middle of a tourist backup. Where like, outdoors, yes, tourists.
I have just one point, I guess, I wanted to make. The backlash against data centers has been, pretty profound across the country. But I want to point out that in the municipality adjacent to Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, where they declined to rezone land to allow data center, that was the issue in that case. In Dauphin County, there's a community there, very densely populated community, and when the possibility of data centers came up, they embraced it. They said, we're going to create a zoning district and in fact enlarge an existing zoning district, make it amenable to data centers. So they have 200 plus acre sites that are zoned specifically for data centers. Both of them are under development now for data centers. And the reason they did that is they said, look, data centers are going to be in our community somewhere. We'd like to have them here because there's a huge amount of upside in the local tax revenue for the school district, the county, and their community. Right. The question was, am I aware of any others? And the answer is yes. And I'm trying to tell you what that community concluded. That doesn't mean that your considerations should be the same as theirs. But there's a story of one community that said, you know what, on balance, we think these things are out of the way enough. And we think that we could do a lot with that local tax revenue, especially in our school district. So that was the conclusion that they reached.
I want to clarify that our chief concern is the Capacity Power Plant that is located immediately adjacent to our town.
And I want
to make sure that that certification is there.
I want to echo the same thing.
Children that attended every single day, Monday to Friday. 195 children.
I want to thank everybody that came out today. We appreciate it. I appreciate the speakers that were here. If you could help us, some of you, put the chairs on those racks, that would be greatly appreciated. And have a great weekend.
I know. Okay. All right. Thankfully, I think this one was better, but but it needs to be like.
job. That's